Okay, I'd like to do an example using the law of sines, in case some of you all are having trouble with it right now. I know there are some. Don't forget in the class notes and video section, but I'm just going to do another one. You may need several, but you've got formula for the law of sines. Normally what happens where people have trouble with this is the solving part of it, which is your algebra skills. So don't forget your formula are a set of proportions where A over the sine of the angle A equals side B over the sine of angle B, which equals C over the sine of angle C. So what you've got to do is you've got to create a pair, one proportion, however, whatever combination you look at, that has your measurements. So if we look at this triangle here, we know angle C, we know angle B, and we know side A. So right now we're having trouble. But given the fact that I know these two angles, I can find angle A because the sum of the angles in a triangle are 180 degrees. If you add these two together, you get 114. So angle A is 180 minus 114. So angle A would be 66 degrees. So the only time you can use the law of sines, you have to have one angle and the side opposite the angle and then another measurement. So now I can use this first ratio here. Then I can pick either to find side C or side B. So let's just go with side B since it's the first one in the proportion. So side A is 5 over the sine of 66, which equals side B over the sine of 63. So here's where the challenge comes in, is we've got to find side B. So at this point, there's several different ways you can work this. You can always manipulate the formula, then put the numbers in, or you can solve from here by finding the decimal representations of each of these or leave them alone. But in order to get your answers more correct on your homework, if you're going to find the decimal of sine of 66, then you better round it to 4 decimal places. So I get for the sine of 66 0.9135, and then I'll find the sine of 63, which is 0.891, and there's zeros after that, so I'm not going to worry about that. So from here, you cross multiply, which means I take 5 times the 0.891 and B times that. So I'm going to get 0.9135B equals 5 times 0.891. So I take 5 times 0.891 and I get 0.9135B equals 4.455. Solve for B. So divide both sides by the 0.9135. So B is 4.455 divided by 0.9135. And B equals 4.876. Now, depending on what you're asked to round to, if you're asked to round to the tenths place, it's 4.9. If you're asked to round to the hundredths place, it's 4.88. So that's your answer for B. So we found this side here. And, looking at the relationship we have between angles and sides, always keep in mind that, this should be the largest side because it's opposite the largest angle. 63 is close to 66, so this side should be smaller than side A, but not by much, and it is. Okay? So the last thing we want to find is side C. Now, you can't use the Pythagorean theorem because this is not a right triangle. So let's go ahead now, and we can choose the fraction here, our ratio, involving C, and we can do A or B. So I'm just going to do A. Doesn't really matter. So I'm going to do 5 over sine 66 is side C over sine 51. So this one's going to be a little different. Well, actually, it's not going to be a little different. Sorry about that. It's going to be relatively the same as what we just did. So again, we're going to find our trig ratios here. Sine of 66 is 0.9135. And then I'm going to, on my calculator, find the sine of 51. And I get 0.7771. Cross multiply. So I take C times the 0.9135 and 5 times the 0.7771. And I get 0.9135C is 3.8857. So you see how I'm rounding to 4 decimal places. You're more apt to get the correct answer on the computer because they don't round till the very end. So if you're rounding like to 3.9, you're going to start your answers are going to be off just a little bit, and then they're going to count it wrong. So just round to several decimal places. So divide both sides by the 0.9135. And I get C is 4.2536. And, again, depending on where you're rounding, if it's to the tenths place, it's 4.3. If it's to the hundredths place, it's 4.25. Okay? So you've solved the triangle. We found all of our measurements. So everything holds true as far as C should be the shortest side because it's opposite the smallest angle. And they all should be fairly close in measurement because these angles are fairly close. All right, so that's an example on the law of sines. There are more videos at the site for finding, when you have to find the angle. But hopefully this helps. I'm now going to move on to an example with the law of cosines. And, if we look at the law of cosines, you have to know when you can use each one. So if I just draw a random triangle, like we've been drawing, I'm going to draw it the same way. A, B, C. They may not always look right, but in math, you never go by what the figure looks like. You go by the measurements. So side A is 9. Side C is 15, and angle B is 99.7. So, to know whether you can use law of cosines or law of sines, remember to use law of sines, you have to have an angle in the side opposite. There's no way we can find this side here. We cannot find side B. We cannot find angle A or angle C without doing something else. So at this point, we use the law of cosines because we have two sides and the included angle. And you've got 3 different formulas for law of cosines. So since I'm finding side B, I choose this one. So from here on out, a lot of it's just your calculator. Can you do your calculating correctly? So I'm just going to substitute. B squared is A squared plus C squared minus 2 times A times C times the cosine of B. So, depending on your calculator, if you have a calculator where you can see everything as you type it in, just enter it in exactly as this. Now, here at home, I don't have that calculator. I've got a 30. I can't do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a couple of extra steps, evaluate as much as I can. 2 times 9 times 15, that's 270. And then I'm going to figure out what the cosine of 99.7 is. And that is negative 0.1685. So again, be careful here with your arithmetic. Add these two together here. This is negative 270 times negative 0.1685. So I actually end up with plus 45.49. So B squared is 351.49. So then B would be the square root of 351.49. And I get B is 18.748. Again, depending upon where you're asked to round to. If it's to the tenths place, it's 0.7. If it's to the hundredths place, it's 18.75. So that's B. So now we have B. And so now we can use the law of sines to find either angle A or angle C, because I do now have a side and the angle opposite that side. So I'm going to do B over sine B is A over sine A. Okay, so 18.7 over the sine of 99.7 equals 9 over sine A. All right, I'll let you get caught up there. And one thing when you're doing a law of cosines, oftentimes you may get two angle measurements or two possibilities. But since I know B is the largest side, I'm okay. Okay, but we always, if we do have a choice between which angle to find, always start with the angle opposite the largest side. So now I'm just going to, again, use my algebra skills. Okay, I can go ahead and make this a decimal, or I can just keep it all in sine form till I'm done. So I'm going to take the sine of 99.7, and I get 0.9857. Equals 9 over sine A. So you might be tempted, and you have to be careful here, and you can do it, but you have to be careful of making this into a decimal because we still want to be able to cross multiply. So I'm just going to go ahead and cross multiply. So I'm going to take this times this and this times this. I always keep what I'm solving for on the left side. That's just how I do it. So I take 18.7 times the sine of A is 9 times 0.9857. I'm going to go ahead and multiply these two together. I get 18.7 sine A is 8.8713. And again, I'm just carrying decimals out just for the fact that you want to get your answers correct. The software, is going to be plus or minus, a tenth or a hundredth or whatever. So it's just better just to carry them out as 4 decimal places, and usually that will suffice. These are not easy, I know, but you just got to just take your time. Don't rush through them. Don't get frustrated, and just think about how to solve for the unknown. So I'm now here at 18.7 sine A equals 8.8713. So now I'm going to divide both sides by the 18.7. So sine A is 8.8713 divided by the 18.7. And sine A is 0.4744. So A is the inverse sine. So you got to make sure you do that correctly. So if you're missing some of these, it could be your calculator. Could be using your calculator wrong. Could be pressing the wrong button. So when I do that, A is 28.32. And since B was rounded to the 10th place, I'm assuming A will be rounded to the 10th place, which is 28.3 degrees. So I'm just going to fill in my triangle. And now I can use the fact that angle C is going to be 180 minus the sum of these two. So I take 28.3 plus 98.7. And I get 127. So angle C is 180 minus 127. So angle C is 63 or 53 degrees. Sorry about that. Okay, and just again to check yourself to make sure something didn't go wrong. Angle B should be the biggest angle. Angle A should be the smallest angle based on the sides. So these, again, are not easy. Law of sines, law of cosines is difficult, but it's not impossible. A lot of it is your calculator. So, again, depending on your calculator, you may want to do, smaller bits and pieces. So I guess if you want to be correct and get these answers correct, you've got to decide what's best for you. If you're not getting them correct by trying to do too much at once on your calculator, then you should go ahead and just take a couple extra steps. That's really all it is. So I think oftentimes it's just about, do you want to get them correct or not? And are you willing to do what it takes? So if you are, you should be fine. But again, there's more examples. These are mine, but there are more in the class notes and videos. So go ahead and look at them and just practice it. So hopefully this helps.